This this is Paul Nobles from eatperform.com. I am sitting here with April Blackford. April, if you want to say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
For the most part, things are pretty chill. We actually did a webinar this weekend for a gym in Kansas, which went pretty good. I mean, it's not something that we normally do in terms of like doing a presentation online, so it wasn't completely polished. There was a um, few technical issues along the way, but all in all, I think everybody kind of got the Eat to Perform message. And other than that, I've been sick. You know, it's interesting. We we get asked a lot about being sick, but it's probably been 3 or 4 years since I've been sick. Um, for any prolonged period of time. This has really kicked my butt for weeks, to the point where, I've been to the doctor twice, and things of that nature. And at this point, I feel like it's kind of running its course. I'll knock on wood. Um, but the interesting part about it is that we always say to people, Kira, shoot, once again, I never know what to do with my dog. Um, the dishwasher's on. The dishwasher's on, so it's kind of freaking her out. Kira, bed. Um, in terms of me being sick, um, the one thing that we always say to people when they are sick is don't diet. Do what feels the most correct. And I've been hungry, like crazy hungry, and so I've been eating a lot of food. And what's interesting for people who don't know is that I weigh myself daily, and so without all that food, my weight would drop, which I'm sure a lot of people would like, yes, that would be amazing, and that is actually not what I would view as amazing, because I'm not really trying to lose a whole bunch of muscle in a week, and so keeping my food intake up has been a pretty decent strategy in terms of just trying to. It's actually affected me mostly in the evenings, and of course, my workouts. I wouldn't even say that they're workouts at this point. They're more just moments of trying to stay active and do what I can, but that's about it. But
I actually did something similar. I think initially when you had first gotten sick a couple of weeks ago, I had gotten sick and was coming down with something that same weekend, and I actually didn't work out. I was out of town with my in-laws, and I actually kept my calorie standpoint up, even though wasn't training. But I kept my calorie standpoint up pretty much higher than normal, up to my training day calories, and I ended up, basically kicking it in the butt within about 2 or 3 days, rather than, like what you said. Most people kind of take that as an opportunity of, oh, I'm sick, I can't work out, I'll lower my calories, when you actually want to do the opposite, to actually try to recover from it.
yeah, I mean, it sort of depends on what kind of sick you are, I guess. But like this, I guess, seems sort of like a sinus infection kind of thing, and so you get that general overall body fatigue and some low grade fevers occasionally, and that kind of stuff really wears on your body if you're not eating, appropriate. Um, so we're not really getting any questions at this point. Um, okay, we do have one question. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Mike is saying, good evening. Is it okay to have a cheat day once a week if I'm trying to increase performance and gain strength, with body fat loss as an additional bonus if it should happen? I'm not a big fan of cheat days, and the reason why I'm not a fan of cheat days is, one, I think it's sort of um, sets up a bad relationship with food. Um, Now, you could call them treat days if you wanted to. Um, I don't even mean that. There are instances, as an example, where, for instance, with some of my CrossFit Games athletes, um, they do something like a treat day idea. sometimes up to 2 times a week, depending on how they're feeling, because obviously the workouts can be a little bit random. In general, though, with Eat to Perform, what you're trying to do is increase your work capacity, and you should have some awareness of how many calories that you're eating. And so ideally you'd be fitting in whatever treats that you would like without having to compromise what your overall goals are. Can you give me, Mike, some ideas of what your macros are at, and maybe that would give me some idea. Let's see. He's getting his macros. I'm going to need you to have your calculator out, April.
Okay. Always have it handy.
But yeah, I hope that makes sense to people. That, I mean, for the most part, one of the advantages of Eat to Perform is that you shouldn't have to have cheat days, because you should be able to eat things that you like relatively, often. In terms of having a big 4,000, 5,000 calorie day or something of that nature. The problem with that is that, if for instance you're normally having 2,500 calories and then you have 5,000 calories, your body's not going to really adjust to that well, and we would sort of suggest that you have more of a balanced approach. Let's see, he's giving us, he's 6 feet, 210 with 20% body fat. So that's not really your macro. To know is how many calories you're eating, Mike, because that'll be a little bit more helpful. April, okay, so you're at around 3,000 calories. That's roughly what I eat. 210 protein, 305 carbs, 105 fats. Honestly, I don't see a reason why you shouldn't be able to fit in on training days. I don't see why you shouldn't be able to fit in, things that you like on those training days. Even on a non-training day, you might be able to get away with roughly 2,500 calories, and that's still, maybe for a 210-pound person, it's going to get a little bit off, but you can still fit in things that you like. So I just don't like the way it sets up for people. I think that, from the standpoint of cheating, you're cheating on your diet. The idea here is that you really shouldn't be dieting most of the time. I think 3,000 calories on your training day probably represents a little bit of a deficit for you, but I'd be a little concerned about that and sort of keep watching the scale. You could have, if you wanted to have, let's say, a day where you had more calories, and then a day that, like, let's say Friday night, you go out with the guys, you want to have 3,500 calories. You could have another day that's only 2,500 calories to offset that, if that makes sense. You might not even do that, right? So it just sort of depends, but oftentimes what you'll see is that if you have kind of one of those days where you're having the beers and pizza and things of that nature, you kind of get a little inflamed. You have a day, rest day, where you have mostly fats, proteins, fibers, vegetables, and it'll kind of get through all that inflammation. I will say this, though. If you're trying to go from 20 to, say, 17, and you're trying to lose, let's say, 10 pounds to get from 210 to 200, you might want to take, like, 10 of those weeks and kind of get the whole cheat day idea out of your head, because you can still get things that you like. You just don't have to be like just balls to the wall. I don't think that really, if you're trying to get a specific goal, I do think there is advantages to buckling down for 8 to 10 days. And, you know, if that means that you have to have 2 beers instead of 6 beers, then that's what that means. But is that helpful to you, Mike, at all? I mean, because I think that, you know, it's just sort of a way to look at it that's a little bit, kind of gives you a little bit of what you want, but it's not really super out there. I think the problem that you're going to always have, though, is if you go from, say 210 pounds to 190 pounds, and you know, you're having this want to have, you know, a 6-pack of beer. Not saying that that's your thing, but, you know, 2 or 3 times a week, you're really going to always struggle to find a good program for that, you know. And so you probably want to look at some ways to manage that. As an example, with alcohol, one of the things that we talk about, because a lot of people, that's a big one for a lot of people. It might not be for you. But trying to use wine or like kind of, you know, tequila, things that kind of do the trick a little quicker, you know, those are things that, and don't have such a high calorie point. Those are things we like people to maybe graduate to offset, you know, kind of that big calorie intake that you have from, you know, something like beer that really doesn't offer you a whole lot. Do you have any thoughts on this, April?
I actually have a very similar belief as you in regards to basically there shouldn't be a need to do that with either perform because he should have enough calories. If he say he was going out with his friends or it was a date night, there are certain strategies he could take. You know, basically where if it was me, I would probably do it on a day that I was training. I would have some carbs post workout, and then I would kind of eat lighter throughout the day, save more calories for whenever I was going out, and then, you know, you should be able to eat and enjoy yourself. Obviously, you know, I don't think that he would be in a position where he would need to just go out and just, you know, it'd be a free-for-all to eat everything you wanted and basically binge and, you know, ate till he made himself sick or felt uncomfortable, you know. But I do think that he could do that, you know, and still fit in, you know, probably whatever he wanted to eat.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems you run into with that, because I kind of remember that, you know, in 2007 doing the 4-hour body thing, right? You would just obsess about the food, right? And I remember making lists of the things that I was going to eat and all this other type of stuff, and this is just like I think a better approach, you know, for most people. So if you have any follow-ups, Mike, just let us know. Otherwise, I'm going to try and get to Clifford's question. Currently laid up with a knee injury, any foods you can recommend for a possible tendon, ligament, or injury? Well, good news. Is something I know a fair amount about, partially because I was in a motorcycle accident and I ripped my foot off of my leg. And so I was laid up for 6 months. One of the things that you want to do is you want to grab. Currently, you're probably in a situation where you can't do that. But the more you can move your ankle, your hip, you know, kind of that inflammation get out of the area. I mean, for the most part, you need the inflammation and the swelling and stuff like that to go back up through your leg, and then your body kind of process that out. Some things that I would suggest, probably, well, first of all, you want to make sure that you're eating an adequate amount of protein. That's going to be a big thing. In terms of strengthening your ligaments, ligaments and tendons, the muscle strengthens, and you're probably going to have some atrophy while you're laid up. And so there's really not going to be a whole lot that you can do, but pretty much anything that you can do to kind of is going to be favorable for ligament and tendon health later on. But in the end, what's going to ultimately help that out is going to be moving and healing and getting better and not rushing into activity. One of the things that we talk about fairly often, and I always kind of throw it out there that, I'd be lying if I said I never used activity to control my weight. Well, this is going to be a really great opportunity for you, because it was a really great opportunity for me when I hurt my ankle, to learn that I could control my weight laying down. Especially for you, where your body's going to spend a lot of energy trying to heal you. Make sure that you're eating enough protein. You're maybe not overdoing it with the carbs, but definitely keeping some carbs in there. Carbs help with muscle protein turnover, so having a moderate amount of carbohydrates, or whatever feels the most correct. I don't know if you could weigh yourself. I wouldn't be overly worried about that, unless you find yourself, you think that you're picking up some bad habits and things of this nature. Stick to mostly whole foods. Stick to things that are filling. One of the tricks that I did when I was laid up was I ate relatively large meals, and that was helpful because it was sort of satiating. You also, like, watch movies, kind of keep your brain occupied. Otherwise, you tend to kind of focus like, well, what do we have in the house? Also, that's the other thing. Keep, like, whoever's there, helping you. I mean, keep some things there that you like, but, if you have a bunch of junk in the house, you're going to eat it, and so kind of be a little cautious there. But, I wouldn't overly do it with the carbohydrates. Eating a bunch of food that's just going to inflame you and make you feel a little bit more yucky. We want to kind of move things a little bit, sort of get that inflammation out, kind of keep that muscle strong, and that will help your tendons heal once you are moving a little bit better. I will say I'm not the best person to ask. I'm not a doctor or anything like that. The only experience that I have. But the minute, well, I had 2 surgeries. I had 1 surgery. I had 3 surgeries. I had 1 surgery that really kind of laid me up for a long time, and I was in a cast, and there wasn't a whole lot I could do about that. But the very next year, I had surgery to get all the hardware out and to remove a bunion, and I was able to, the doctor was just shocked at how quickly I was able to heal, because stretching my ankle and kind of keeping moving. And so, like, genuinely, pull-ups, push-ups, whatever you can do, stay moving, stay active, because it's a real important part of the deal. I think he did have, he said, able to be mobile, just can't fully flex my left knee underweight. Honestly, you could probably do a lot of stuff, with having only one leg available to you, and I would do that. I found that to be just amazing. Like I said, the next year, having that other surgery, it was so enlightening to realize how much movement made a difference for me. So if you have any other questions, let me know, or if we didn't really fully address what you think. Any thoughts on that, April? I know that in the forums, there's a lot of people that suffer injuries, and they probably have some feedback.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I normally stress is exactly what you said, not to get too aggressive with your calories, because it's going to hinder the healing and the recovery time. But since he, basically, it doesn't sound like he's completely bedridden, like what you said, spend this time to focus on getting beastly strong on your upper body, focus on what you can do.
Yeah, the other thing, too, that I think it goes on underrated, I've been talking about it a lot, is bodybuilding. and doing like some levels of reps and things of this nature. This is a pretty good time for that. Like I said, pull-ups, push-ups, things of that nature. These, um, once you start to get back into the gym, you know, you're not far behind on upper body as well as lower body, and so you can kind of jump back into the mix a little bit quicker. So he's saying all good, thank you. Let's see, Barbara's asking, what can I do if in a college student on a meal plan and eating cafeterias where I can't always figure out macros by weighing? April, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you have any ideas related to strategies there?
Yeah, I would say that if you're generally familiar with tracking, you should be able to kind of guesstimate and get an eyeball for it. Most of the time for women, a palm size amount of protein is going to be approximately about 4 ounces cooked. Same thing, just kind of eyeball the protein sources. You can generally look at it and tell if it's got added fats in it, that type of thing, and, just roughly calculate. I think running food is, to kind of, depending upon what your goals are, if it's actually to eat more or to eat less, but roughly calculating I think is better than not calculating at all, because at least gives you an idea as to a ballpark range.
Right, and usually what happens for a lot of people is if they aren't calculating at all, a lot of people think that they overeat as a result. I think a lot of people undereat, subconsciously because they're trying to be a little bit more understanding and things of that nature. But it sort of puts this fear, like, oh my goodness, is this a lot of calories or whatever, and so you tend to undereat as a result. Let's see. If you have any follow-ups to that, Barbara, let us know. I think the other thing too is to count what you can when you can. So if you're at home at your parents or something of that nature and they have a food scale, or I will say, like Chipotle as an example, you're able to count that pretty easily. There are some things that once you kind of see them, it does help you a little bit.
Also, just to add, for people that are obsessive over counting their macros, there are people, they actually sell little baby pocket scales that you can put in your pocket that you can take with you. Because I know people who actually go to Chipotle and argue about the fact that they're not getting 4 ounces of meat, protein in, their meal, and they specifically want it weighed out.
I mean, I had one of those conversations yesterday with the lady. I was like, well, the guy in front of me kind of made an issue with her, and he's like, seriously, that's not enough food. You didn't give me, because he actually only got 1 scoop, and I thought he was being kind of a jerk, and then she did mine, and I was like, you know what, he's right. You're kind of shorting us on the meat here, lady. Let's go. But it didn't really work. I ended up having to buy triple meat, and it was really only like double meat, but whatever. Got to get in the protein. Barbara did say, what you can when you can, very true. Sometimes I'll use it as an excuse that I can't count it. Haha. Yeah, I mean, it just depends. I mean, some people use it as an excuse to do more. Some people use it as an excuse to do less. So Adelia is saying, how often should we have our macros calculated, and how do we know when to redo them? I mean, it sort of depends on if you're hitting the goals that, I mean, how often would you have somebody redo their macros, April?
Generally, when someone gains or loses 10 pounds, we'll usually make adjustments. Or if someone's been following the plan for, say, 8 weeks and, they want to drop body fat or they want to lose weight and the scale hasn't moved an inch, and they're consistently taking 3 rest days, 4 training days, doing everything optimally like they should. At that point, we may look at adjusting their macros. But it all depends from person to person, depending upon what someone's background is, I've actually had some cases where I've had members who I actually had to adjust their calories up, rather than down, substantially up, and then they started losing weight. So it just varies, depending upon how long. But generally, for the most part, we would reconfigure the protein and stuff usually with in the approximate of 10 pounds lost or gained.
Right. I mean, in general, it depends on the athlete, but in general, we want people to be dieting for short periods of time, eight to 10 weeks. If you're plateaued, there are some times where you would want to go 100 to 200 calories lower, but like April said, for a lot of people, it ends up going the other way. The other thing is you can play with macro distribution. So maybe your carbs could go up and your fats could go down, but your calories actually end up being either roughly the same or down as a result. The one thing that I would definitely say to all of you that will make a really big difference for you if you listen to it is if you're plateaued, and you're plateaued for say 2 to 3 weeks, it's time to stop. Because 100 calories isn't going to do that much. 300 to 500 calories is going to take away too much. And so what you really want to do is just reset and then take 3 to 6 months off, depending on how much fat you have to lose, and then redo it. And I think once people start to get in that cycle of okay, I'll lose 8 pounds, and then 6 months later I'll come back. If I have 8 more pounds to lose, then I'll lose 8 pounds then. It's no big deal. There's no reason I can't wait. And it's sort of freeing, and I think ultimately really a better approach that ends up being more sustainable for most people. Let's see, Tara. Let's see. I'm currently thinking about changing from CrossFit to Zumba and weight training. I hurt my back in May, and what I've been able to lift since then has gone considerably down by 50%. Still in the healing process, but wondered if I can still continue with this way of eating. I started about a month ago and still struggle with logging and tracking my food and eating clean. Well, I would get a little concerned about the whole eating clean thing. I think that eating mostly whole foods is going to be, being 100% adherent to anything, I think is ultimately not really a healthy relationship with food. In terms of Zumba, in terms of these types of things, I'll tell you this: Zumba burns more calories than CrossFit, almost 100%. You're moving for like an hour, and so if you're burning that amount of calories, you want to be able to have enough food so you can kind of adapt to it, But constantly using like long cardio or Zumba or something of that nature to where you're just not allowing for appropriate adaptation with food. I mean, I guess the easiest way to say it is that you would need more food with the things that you want to do rather than the things that you've been doing. Any thoughts on that, April? I mean, I can tell you I've been running, or I was running before I got sick, but I mean, I've had to up my calories pretty substantially, because of the running. But that, once again, this is like a different idea here, right? I mean, I'm not constantly worried about losing weight. I'm not constantly worried about losing fat. We only do that short periods of time. And so if you have that mindset, it's really sort of freeing and allows you to make better decisions, and you can do things. I like the decision that you're making related to, hey, this is hurting me. I'm going to do something that I enjoy that isn't hurting me. I think that's a good decision. But in terms of eating less, no. If you burn more calories, you should be eating more calories. And certainly the activities you're describing burn more calories than CrossFit. They don't
Yeah,
necessarily. They don't
I
have
think
the
she was.
hold on one second. They don't necessarily have the adaptation that weight training has. Okay, so difference there. But in terms of the overall calories, you would definitely want to keep your calories a little higher.
I think she was just concerned that the Zumba is not as high, basically not as high intensity as CrossFit is, and was just making sure she could still do Eat to Perform, which I think she could. I agree with you in regards to the Zumba burning more calories, and I say if you enjoy it and you like doing it, and it's just something fun for you, then keep it. I would suggest to have an adequate amount of weightlifting days in there, if that's what you want to do, depending upon your goal. You want to gain muscle, muscle mass, that type of thing. But if you're going to Zumba for, 4 days a week and lift weights one day a week, I think you're probably just, going to end up being, you know, not have the look and the muscle mass that you would like, and ultimately you'll end up being in a longer calorie deficit because of the amount of calories that you burn.
I do think that that is a good plan. I will say this: you probably don't need as many calories on your weight training days, but once again, I mean, sometimes weight training is very taxing on your central nervous system, and so if you don't have calories to kind of offset that, you're not going to really get the adaptation that you want from that, and that's sort of what leads to that whole skinny fat thing, because um, you're breaking down tissue without allowing for enough food to build the tissue back up and stronger. That's why you lift weights, right? Is to get better at lifting weights and get stronger.
It's actually funny, the point that you just made is, like me, for example, I don't do any formal type of cardio, and I don't look at weight training as how many calories can I burn while I weight train. I look at how much can I lift, how strong can I get, and I actually eat an adequate amount of calories to recover from it, not to eat back any calories, or to create a calorie deficit from it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's really freeing to have moments of that, and I mean, like, for moments for April is like the last 4 years, um, but
Well,
it's
it's only been two.
I did, I kind of sat at 165 for like 3 years there, and then I went up to 185 for powerlifting competition, and now, I'm kind of coming back down. I probably, um, but yeah, for like 3 years, it's amazing how your body just adjusts to that set point and then just kind of sticks there. But I was only gonna get a certain amount stronger at 165. Now that I was able to go to 185, get my deadlift up 100 pounds, now I can kind of come down, um, to 170 and probably not lose a whole lot of strength. I don't really think. I actually feel like I'm almost as strong right now, though I did take almost a year off and focused more on squatting to try and get my squat up to a respectable level. Let's see. She's got like a really long post that's sort of hard to read. Something about, let's see, workout days, 2,000 calories, 2,030 calories, 130 protein, 220 carbs, carbs of protein 2 to 1. Pre-workout have about 50 grams, slow digesting, 25 grams. Post-workout around 10 grams. Sounds like the advice that she's getting, 1640. I think you're the one thing I'm seeing in your posts, okay, is that you feel like you could do something really wrong, and I just don't think you can. I mean, not with the numbers that you're talking about. I mean, when we talk about 2,000 calories, I mean, the problems come when you have 3,000 calories. The problems come when you have workout days with 2,800 calories. You having 2,100 calories isn't going to make that big of a difference. And so if I was you, I would try to start to think of this a little bit more rationally. I know this is all new, maybe, and it's maybe a little scary because you're moving from high intensity activity to more of an approach that is kind of more respectful of what you believe is the best thing for you. But I can tell you, as someone that trains kind of similar to what you're talking about, I don't really change all that much. In fact, I probably eat more. I'm just trying to think. I'm pretty sure that I mean, because there's just almost no day that I think of, um, I'm doing similar things where I have like outs and I'm weightlifting, and I only have 2 days where I WOD anymore. I mean, my food really doesn't change all that much. And so, to have like a 400 calorie deficit on rest days, I think that's fine. She did have a follow up. Her posts are really long. Let's see. Also, anybody on this, I recently focused on his eating or exercise, which makes it super tough for me. Prior, for many years, I ate clean and worked out, rarely had anything bad in the house, and now it's the opposite. There's bad things to eat all around me, and I have a tough time with self-control. You want to take that one, April? I mean,
I think
what's Tom like?
I think the self-control issue is probably the unhealthy relationship with trying to constantly eat clean. When you're
Yeah.
constantly, constantly trying to eat everything that's, healthy and squeaky clean, and restrict yourself from that you really like, if there's a bag laying around the house, it's going to consistently call your name until you go eat it. That's just the bottom line,
Well, just judging from the protein, she's saying that she's 130 pounds. I mean, I don't know where you're trying to go there, but I don't know what your height is, but 130 pounds sounds pretty good. I mean, if you can kind of put the right stimulus as it relates to the weight training and a little bit of the cardio activities that you're talking about, I think it could probably really help you in the direction that you want to go. I do think that you say you're newly married, and that's one of the negotiations that all couples have is who's going to win, in that. And I think what ends up happening is he should win a little bit and you should win a little bit. I think some of what you're saying with the clean eating and things of that nature, you'd probably be better off mentally if you kind of let go of that a little bit. But also I think that I know I've known my wife since I was 19 years old. I've been married to her for 25 years. She's maybe cooked for me 10 times in those 25 years, right? I cook most of the meals. And so, just by creatures of comfort, if you're cooking the meals, you tend to get to pick what you eat. That would be one strategy that you could use. The other strategy that you could use would be to, gosh, I don't know. It's so hard because on the one hand, I don't feel like the whole family should have to come to your way of thinking, but on the same note, like for myself, when I started CrossFit, I was not the one that pushed my wife to join CrossFit. It was all the other people at CrossFit, specifically all the women at CrossFit, that talked her into joining. And now she's way bigger into CrossFit than I am, because I just find that I enjoy the weightlifting more, and now I've started to kind of enjoy running. I think I enjoy just sort of being alone for a bit, and not thinking about work and things of that nature. But I don't know that there is a great answer to that, honestly. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, April?
Like my husband, he enjoys He's got, like what you said, I cook majority of the dinners. I would say 99% of the time. He might cook once, twice a month maybe. But, obviously I have the decision in regards to what's going to be cooked and what's going to be eaten. So, I cook it, and if you don't like it, you cook something yourself. And ultimately it gets eaten. But
Right.
for the most part, he's a big candy eater. He likes Mike and Ike's and Skittles and Starburst and stuff like that. He eats stuff like that. He
But he's
runs.
active. I mean, he's not inactive.
No, no, no. He runs and he lifts. But that's the stuff that he enjoys. But those are his foods that that he eats, that he keeps tucked away in his little special hiding spot. Just like I have a whole cabinet full of dark chocolate that no one touches. I have my
Yeah.
own special foods. So it's kind of I would say, as long as you've got the things that you enjoy that you can fit in your diet, then he should also have his things as well. I never get the urge.
I've had to learn that with my daughters. We, it's sort of tough being like nutrition coach guy, and then you have teenage daughters, and the last thing I want them to do is have a bad relationship with food. And so, I mean, there's probably Takis somewhere in my house right now. Those are just, they get to have one or two things that they like, but they just don't get to have just an enormous amount of bad food. And I think that there are things that you should, stand up for yourself for, and say, this is kind of what I'm trying to stand for, and if you're that's not your thing, that's fine. Let's try and find some ways that you and I can kind of meet in solid ground. But hey, bud, this train's going this way, and it sounds like, you'd like to be on this train, and so, let's try and figure out some way that you can have some things that you enjoy, but also we're not doing things irresponsibly. Because I can tell you, I don't know if you have any kids or not, I can tell you, once you have kids, it gets a lot harder. So it's way better to establish those good routines right now. Let's see. And she said, thanks for the good advice. Let's see. Steve's saying, I don't drink alcohol, but I love iced tea. I'm worried about the sugars in the iced tea. Is it okay to have one iced tea a day, or should I try to avoid it? Well, this is sort of what we were talking about earlier with Mike. You can certainly fit in iced tea, sugared iced tea. And if you like sugared iced tea and that's a priority for you, I don't see any reason why you couldn't factor that in. In fact, I would even go further to say that if you're going to have a plan that is going to try and get you lean, and you're planning on drinking iced tea for the rest of your life, you should try and figure out a way to keep that iced tea in there. The one thing that I think the biggest mistake that people make is they take alcohol out, or they take all the sugar out, or whatever, and then they do a cleanse for 30 days. And then on day 31, they bring it all back in, they gain back all the weight. Whatever it is we all have our non-negotiables. One of the non-negotiables that I had once I started going to get fit is that I wanted to have some dessert. I wanted to be able to end the night with something that I enjoyed. And that's been a non-negotiable for like the last 6-7 years. And certainly I've gotten healthier about it. I've gotten a better approach about it. Occasionally I don't have that. If I'm I don't always feel it. Maybe there's a goal that I'm looking for that it might be better off if I didn't have it. But you should always have those non-negotiables. You should have something that you enjoy that kind of helps you, because let's face it, life is meant to be lived, and we're working out really hard You know, at least you should be working out really hard. Oh, I don't know what the hell you're doing at Eat to Perform. You know, I mean, the whole goal of Eat to Perform is to try and increase your work capacity, because as far as I can tell, for everybody out there, as long as they expand their work capacity, they end up, you know, reaching their goals a lot easier. And and that's really the easiest way to say that. I mean, look at the people that eat the cleanest, you know, and are really super strict. Those are some of the most confused people there are. Look at some of the people that eat pretty freely, work out, you know, a good amount, and then ultimately end up with abs and things of this nature. You know, so work capacity as the lead is definitely going to make a difference. But I would not be overly worried about, you know, one thing of iced tea, honestly. But if you,
I was going to say, my non-negotiable,
half, you know, that would be a strategy. Like if you were looking for some fat loss or something.
my non-negotiable is flavored coffee creamer. I just refuse to give it up. I don't care, you know, whether even when I'm dieting, when I'm not dieting, I have never given it up, and I refuse to give it up. So
You and your GMOs, man. You should have a Monsanto T-shirt on. You're like the anti-food babe. That's funny. Let's see. Taylor had a question. What are your thoughts about sucralose? I know Progenics uses it in all their products, while SFH Whey has more of a holistic vibe as far as what's in their products. I don't use SFH, partly because I have a dairy protein allergy, and Progenics is hydrolyzed whey, and so I use Progenics. So my view on sucralose is, in small doses, it's really not that bad. I certainly wouldn't, you know, want to have 4 Diet Cokes, adding Splenda to everything. You know, I don't think that that's favorable. There are people that would argue that it's really not that bad. I probably wouldn't be one of those people. I just don't believe that. I mean, I don't know really how to say it, but you know, I think people get overly worried about kind of like these. What am I saying, April? I mean, basically, like people get caught up in like these rumors that this is bad, and there's really no proof that any of these things.
Exactly. There absolutely is no proof to it. You know, just like you know,
I don't think you should be overly reliant on it. But on the same note, like I said, I use it. I don't think it's bad. I know, you know, a ton of PhDs, and they don't think it's bad. So, you know, that would be my thought on it.
It's basically exactly what you said. My view is everything in moderation. You know, if you want to have, you know, a couple of, if you really enjoy Diet Cokes and you want to have, you know, 2 a week, that's fine. If you're having, you know, 7 a day, you know, then that might be more of an issue. You know, but you know, everything in moderation and small doses, I think, is completely fine.
SFH uses stevia and grass-fed whey. Stevia, I mean, stevia is supposedly better for it because it's not man-made. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It is still relatively new. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. Grass-fed whey has always been kind of one of those tricky things, because, you know, the reason why you have grass-fed is because of the fat, and that the fat is better. Whey does not really have fat in it, and so having grass-fed whey compared to regular, from a whey protein standpoint, is not that advantageous one way or the other. Let's see. Sorry for my computer. Was a question about, and no, we got to it once you got back. Figured it's not as big of a deal as long as your diet is clean. Well, once again, we're sort of hearing this clean diet thing, and we're really, you know, we're fine with meats and veggies, but let's try and get away from like the clean thing, because I think what ends up happening is that you get too focused on the value of food being just meats and veggies, and that's going to get me to where the goals that I want to go to, rather than some level of starches, great work capacity. That's what really gets you to where you want to go. And so that's my thought on that. Teddy's saying, as part of a response to a few questions ago, you said something like you can't really make any mistakes at 2,100 calories. Maybe when you get in that area of 2,700 or 2,800 calories. Just curious what you meant. What I meant is she was really, really obsessing over the small details related to 2,100 calories on her workout days and 1,600 calories on her rest days and things of this nature. And what I was saying is that it's the people that don't fall that end up eating 2,800 calories instead of 2,100 calories that end up having the problems. It's the people that are a little bit more conscious of the way that they eat. You could technically probably have 2,250, right? And then it wouldn't affect you negatively. In general, if you think about what we're doing and what all of you are doing, I got some bad news for you. Your counting is probably off, right? Your calories on a daily basis, they're kind of off. All we're really trying to do is hit ballparks, because you get a better feel for it as you do it over time. I'm sure April, as an example, has her game super tight. She's been counting for a long period of time, and so it's better and better and better as you go. But I don't think it gets better obsessing about it more. In general, you want to be able to eat enough food to propel great work capacity, and too much food obviously isn't going to be something that's going to be super advantageous for that, because you get bloated. You get there's only so much food that is going to convert to energy for workouts. In fact, workouts really aren't, as most of us know, isn't where we're going to use most of our calories on a daily basis anyway. So that's what I meant by that, if that was unclear. We pretty much ran through all the questions. I don't know if anybody has any follow-up. Do you have any thoughts, April, on what we were talking about? I have to say, guys, I'm still not 100%, and so some of the stuttering and things of that nature. And then my dog just kind of keeps jumping around in this area over here. Any thoughts, April, on what we were talking about?
It's funny that you said that in regards to kind of, basically, what you're actually counting, is probably not the actual amount, and it's true. Even the nutritional values of food are just an estimation. There is no, exact amount as to the calories of anything, that they can't, that you can say, okay, 1 cup of zucchini is actually 20 calories. It's all just a guesstimation. And it's funny, I have been tracking a long time and not food, but I am more free. Like I had a wild salmon burger tonight on a gluten-free bun, and I put some spicy aioli on it. Do you think I counted that aioli? No, I didn't. Do you think I weighed it out? No, I didn't. Did I glob it on there? No. But at the end of the day, spooning, spreading a little bit of aioli on my, salmon burger is not going to make me fat, or,
Right. And at the end of the day, what you're really just trying to do is be more conscious. It actually kind of comes back to what Barbara's question was earlier, where you're not necessarily being specific, but you're at least getting in the ballpark. And just getting in the ballpark and becoming a little bit more understanding, and then also not just always focusing on negative. Sometimes focusing on, adding in food to, get more work capacity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've had this conversation before. Anytime I've ever increased my calories, the scale always goes down for me, unintentionally. It always goes down. So, I think it's, don't be so strict. Don't be so scared to stick to the same calorie standpoint for a long period of time.
That is it. Okay, so we're done with questions. I'm not going to beg people for questions because honestly, I need to get to bed anyway. Well, let's see. We did have one more question. Steve's asking, when you work out, do you use a heart rate monitor? That is a great question. Yes, I do. I don't all the time. I don't when I do CrossFit, as an example, but I do when I run. And there's a lot of advantages to using a heart rate monitor, and I'm really excited about the new Apple Watch and a lot of the fitness watches that are coming along. I think more data is better. Once again, is that perfect? How do I track it? I use I think it's called Runkeeper, which is what I use for my running. I have actually a number of heart rate monitors. I have a lot of the Polar stuff, and then also something from Zephyr that I'm trying to remember what it specifically does, but that was one of the early Bluetooth monitors. And then also HRM, which Tom is saying Runkeeper is great. I think Runkeeper is a great app once I got used to it, but it's one of the best running apps there is out there. But yeah, I mean, heart rate, really kind of refines things. Once again, I think heart rate is one of these things that we're talking about. You're really just trying to get a ballpark. It's not going to give you specifics. So if you see that you burned 800 calories, don't go buy 800 calories worth of food and eat that right then and there, because obviously you would have burned some calories without running no matter what. There's a lot of factors that are involved there. I do think that having some level of understanding. Oh, the other thing that I do with heart rate monitor for sure, 100% every single time, is Airdyne. I have an Airdyne in my house, and so I use it whenever I have my Airdyne on. Now, here's something interesting, Steve. You know how you always see people on Airdyne and they're just going crazy, crazy, crazy? One of the suggestions that I've heard that I use, and I like it a lot, is to try and stay under 140. Now, 140 is sort of kind of lower. I actually just use 150 as my guide, and that's a comfortable workout. I think what happens with people is that they want everything to be high intensity, and it's like you can do a lot more work at low intensity. I mean, if you sprint, you're going to wear yourself out really quickly, right? But if you kind of do a light jog, you might be able to run 12 miles. So, if you can keep your heart rate 140 to 150, you can get a lot of work done. And like I said, those are some of the days that I use. Like Mike was talking earlier. This is the one thing that people like. They like to hear that they can eat more, but they don't like to hear the long endurance part. One of the biggest additions to my life recently has been long endurance. And I'm not in love with it. I'm not one of these people that are out there trying to get a runner's high and things of this nature, but I do enjoy it. I enjoy the serenity when my wife runs with me. I mean, most of these runs, especially like the 7 and 10 mile runs, those are going to be at a very low pace. So I could literally have anybody come with me and just kind of enjoy conversation and have a good experience. Otherwise, I'm just listening to music. It's actually, and it's not just running, by the way. I'll be doing like rowing and Airdyne intervals during the wintertime, because right now it's like 2 below here in Minnesota, and there's snow on the ground, so I'm probably not going to be doing a lot of running. But what I will be doing is cross-country skiing. So I just kind of changed some of the things of what I'm doing. I don't think I can. I'm not very good cross-country skiing, so I can't really do that for for size. hopefully I'll get comfortable with it where I can do it, because I do like it when I can do it, but I'm not 100% comfortable. I'm a boy from Louisiana, so. Steve's saying, are you running for periodization, longer mile, slower pace, or are you training for something? Not really training for anything. I just have one shorter day, which is 3 to 5 miles, and then one longer day, which is 10 miles. But it's not just running. Like I said, the other day, my 3 to 5 mile day, I did Airdyne and rows, and so I think I ended up doing 4 miles that day, or the equivalent of what 4 miles is, and then most of it was in running, and then I used the Airdyne. The reason why I do the Airdyne is I just like getting off the rower. I like having the variety, walking over to the Airdyne, doing the Airdyne, coming back to the rower, so it's just not so monotonous, right? So. So I hope that's helpful. But yeah, data. We're always in favor of data. I think data is helpful for a lot of people, especially when you get out of the mindset of constantly trying to subtract. When you start to add, it just changes everything. It opens up. It's sort of like you're just banging your head against the wall for a long period of time, and then you realize, if I just walk the other way, there's no wall there. There's so many options available to you. So anyway, it's 8 o'clock here, and like I said, I'm going to try and get some rest so I can kind of kick this thing in the butt and be done with it. April, do you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Good night, everybody.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you guys in the forums. If you're not in the forums, make sure you get in there. A lot of what we're talking about is really kind of things that are just introductions. More or less, you want to follow up on the in the forums and make sure that you're kind of tweaking things as needed. And we have a whole bunch of coaches, including April, to do that. I get in there on occasion myself, but lately not so much because I've been busy. So, super. Thanks for everybody being here.